Some machines stand the test of time, proving their worth season after season. Others, they make farmers question every life decision that led them to that purchase. Tractors are supposed to be the backbone of the farm, built for reliability, strength, and endurance. But what happens when they fall short, when instead of making life easier, they become a daily struggle? Today, we're looking at the worst utility tractors in U.S. history. Some of these were overhyped, others were just plain flawed, and a few were so bad they made farmers want to go back to using horses. Let's get into it. Minneapolis Moline G1355. Meet the 1970s with the Minneapolis Moline G1355, a tractor that looked great on paper but fell apart in reality. With a massive 585 cubic inch engine pumping out 135 PTO horsepower, this machine was meant to be a powerhouse. Instead, it became a constant source of headaches. The biggest problem? The camshaft failures. These things broke down so often that some farmers started keeping spare parts handy at all times. You could fix it, sure, but don't get too comfortable, because it would fail again, and again, and again. The engine had another nasty habit: overheating. If you didn't keep the cooling system in perfect condition, it would boil over faster than an angry farmer who just realized his tractor broke down in the middle of a job. And when the cylinder heads cracked, it meant a repair bill big enough to make you rethink your life choices. Then came the transmission. The power shift system required just the right touch, like handling a fragile antique. Get it wrong, and you could fry the components faster than a summer sun dries a mud puddle. Comfort? Not much. The operator platform vibrated like a jackhammer, and the steering sometimes seemed to have a mind of its own. If you spent long hours on this thing, you probably needed a chiropractor on speed dial. The G1355 had all the makings of a great tractor, but its long list of problems turned it into a nightmare. Farmers who bought one spent more time fixing it than actually using it, and many regretted their decision. Oliver 1755. The Oliver 1755 was supposed to be a powerhouse, but instead it became famous for all the wrong reasons. Its 80 horsepower engine sounded impressive, but under the hood it was a ticking time bomb. The crankshaft and bearings had a nasty habit of failing way too soon. Farmers quickly learned that a well-maintained 1755 ran fine until it didn't, and when it didn't, the repair bills were enough to ruin your day. The hydraulic system was another weak point. Leaks were common, and the relief valve seemed to enjoy failing at the worst moments. Steering could randomly lock up, which is exactly what you don't want when hauling a heavy load downhill. While some still admire the 1755 for its old-school charm, most farmers who owned one have stories filled with regret. It was powerful, sure, but reliability? That's a different story. Allis-Chalmers WC. Next up, the Allis-Chalmers WC, a tractor that somehow managed to be both ahead of its time and completely frustrating. This thing was built between 1933 and 1948, and while it gained popularity, it had some serious flaws. The first red flag? The brakes. Hand-operated brakes that were about as effective as using a spoon to stop a rolling boulder. Going downhill became a test of courage, and sharp turns on uneven terrain were a guaranteed adrenaline rush, whether you wanted one or not. Then there was the narrow front end. While common in those days, it made tipping over a regular occurrence. Farmers had to develop cat-like reflexes to keep this thing upright. Add to that the magneto ignition system, which needed constant maintenance, and you had a tractor that required more patience than most farmers had time for. Want an electric start? Be ready to cough up extra cash. And if something broke, good luck finding parts. Even minor issues could leave you out of commission for weeks. The WC had potential, but it also had plenty of reasons to drive owners crazy. John Deere 5055E. John Deere, a name known for reliability, except when it comes to the 5055E. This 21st century machine looked good on paper. A 55 horsepower engine and a promise of efficiency? Sign farmers up. But in reality, this tractor came with more problems than a high school math test. First, the transmission. Shifting gears smoothly? Not a chance. Some owners felt like they were arm wrestling their own tractor just to get it into the right gear. Then came the electrical issues. Sensors malfunctioned, warning lights flickered, and the fuel gauge seemed to make up numbers as it went. The worst part? The tractor sometimes refused to start for no reason at all. Farmers were left stranded in their own fields, begging their deer to cooperate. The hydraulic system was another weak spot. Trying to handle heavy implements? The 5055E struggled. Without adding front ballast, lifting heavier loads became a gamble. And comfort? Let's just say the seat and control layout didn't do any favors for anyone spending long hours on this machine. For those who trusted the John Deere name, the 5055E was a massive disappointment. It was supposed to be a reliable workhorse, but instead it left many farmers wishing they'd bought something else. Ford 8NA tractor that made big promises but delivered a mixed bag of surprises. When it hit the market in 1947, farmers were hyped. It had a 4-speed transmission, a 3-point hitch, and just enough horsepower to handle small farm tasks. But if you were expecting smooth sailing, you were in for a rude awakening. First off, the rear tires were terrible for anything other than the driest soil. If it rained, good luck getting any work done. And then there was the overheating problem. The engine was simple, sure, but it couldn't handle heat to save its life. The radiator clogged constantly, and keeping the cooling system in check felt like babysitting a toddler. If that wasn't enough, the front-mounted distributor was a magnet for water, turning rainy days into an electrical nightmare. And let's talk about the PTO. The lack of a live PTO meant that as soon as you hit the clutch, everything stopped. Not ideal when you're trying to run a mower or baler. The brakes, grease leaks made sure they were about as useful as stopping a freight train with your feet. The Ford 8N was supposed to be a game changer, but for many it was just a headache on 4 wheels. Belarus 510. The Belarus 510 came from Eastern Europe, bringing with it a reputation for being cheap, simple, and supposedly effective. On paper, it looked like a great deal. 50 horsepower, no-nonsense engineering, and a price tag that wouldn't make your wallet cry. But once it started working, things went south fast. For starters, shifting gears felt like arm wrestling with a bear. If you didn't have a strong grip before, this tractor made sure you got one. And let's talk about the hydraulics. If they weren't leaking, they were on the verge of it. Every repair turned into a detective mission, and finding replacement parts was like looking for lost treasure. Good luck deciphering the manuals, too. They might as well have been written in an ancient script. Comfort? Forget about it. The cab was loud and vibrations traveled straight to the operator. By the end of the day, it felt like you had been in a fight with the machine itself. Some owners still swear by its rugged simplicity, but for most, the Belarus 510 was just a headache on wheels. International Harvester 656. The International Harvester 656 had potential, but potential doesn't mean much when the problems pile up. With its 60 horsepower engine, it was supposed to handle a variety of tasks, but in reality, it gave farmers more trouble than it was worth. The hydrostatic transmission was a nice idea when it worked. More often than not, it didn't. The power steering took its sweet time to respond, an uphill task became an exercise in frustration, and don't get started on the torque amplifier. If it worked, shifting was smooth. If it didn't, you were stuck choosing between painfully slow or uncomfortably fast. Maintenance was a nightmare. Changing filters required twisting into positions that would make a gymnast jealous. The rear main seal had a bad habit of leaking, and if you didn't catch it, the clutch would suffer. Overheating was another common problem, with the radiator acting like a magnet for debris. Farmers expected durability, but the 656 made them second-guess their purchase. JCB Fastrac 2155 JCB tried to change the game with the Fastrac 2155. It looked sleek, had impressive road speeds, and promised a smooth ride. But when it came to real farm work, it was a different story. The biggest problem? It was over-engineered for what farmers actually needed. The advanced suspension system worked great on the road, but in the field it turned into a maintenance nightmare. Oil leaks in the suspension cylinders were a regular occurrence, and finding parts wasn't exactly easy. Weight distribution was another issue. It was front-heavy, which made it feel unstable on rough terrain. And then there were the electronics. The Fastrac 2155 came loaded with features, But those features came with error codes, mechanical problems, and not enough local mechanics trained to fix them. It looked like a tractor from the future, but in reality, it was just a high-tech headache. Farmers wanted a workhorse, not a computer on wheels that constantly needed attention. Farmall M. The Farmall M is often praised as the tractor that built America. But let's be honest, if you spent enough time wrestling with one, you didn't need a gym membership. Introduced in 1939, this beast packed a 247.7 cubic inch four-cylinder engine with about 34 drawbar horsepower. Sounds great, right? Well, not so fast. First off, the steering. This was full-on mechanical, which meant if you had weak arms, the Farmall M would make sure you didn't for long. Turning it was like trying to wrestle a bear. Good luck making tight turns without breaking a sweat. Then there was the fuel consumption. If tractors had personal vendettas against fuel efficiency, the Farmall M led the rebellion. It drank gas like it was going out of style. Long days in the field? Better have extra fuel on hand, or you'd be stranded with nothing but your regrets. Starting it in cold weather was another adventure. Some farmers swore it had a mind of its own. Crank, adjust, repeat, until finally, after what felt like a full workout, it roared to life. And let's not forget the brakes. They needed constant adjusting and were about as reliable as a weatherman predicting next month's rain. The narrow front wheel design didn't help much either, making it a little too eager to tip over on uneven ground. All in all, the Farmall M was tough, but it made sure you were too. It had its fans, but it also had its fair share of frustrated owners who spent more time fighting it than farming with it. White 2105. And now the grand prize for the worst American utility tractor goes to the White 2105. This was supposed to be the ultimate combination of Oliver and Minneapolis Moline Engineering. Instead, it felt like they combined all their worst ideas into one machine. Powered by a 354 cubic inch Perkins diesel engine with 105 PTO horsepower, it looked solid at first glance. But then you actually used it, and reality hit hard. The transmission was a disaster. Frequent shifting led to excessive wear, and before long, you'd be looking at expensive rebuilds. You know it's bad when farmers start avoiding certain gears just to keep their tractor running a little longer. The hydraulic system leaked everywhere. If you parked it overnight, you might return to find a nice puddle waiting for you. And even when it did work, the pump capacity struggled to keep up with demanding tests. Then there was the cab. It was meant to be more comfortable, but all it really did was trap engine noise. Instead of peace and quiet, you got a never-ending symphony of whining gears and vibrations, strong enough to shake the fillings out of your teeth. It didn't take long for farmers to realize they'd made a mistake. The White 2105 earned its spot at the top of this list, not for innovation, but for sheer frustration. It was a mechanical disaster that had more problems than solutions. Tractors are supposed to make farming easier. These three, however, seem to have a different goal: making sure farmers earned every bit of their harvest the hard way. The Farmall M turned every job into a workout. The G1355 spent more time broken than running. And the White 2105? Well, let's just say it's the reason some farmers switch brands forever. If there's a lesson here, it's this: just because a tractor looks good on paper doesn't mean it'll be good in the field. Choose wisely, or you might end up with a machine that gives you more problems than profits. Whether they had weak transmissions, faulty hydraulics, or just made farming a bigger headache than it needed to be, these machines left their mark for all the wrong reasons. Did we miss a tractor that deserves a spot on this list? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the best and worst machines to ever hit the field. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.